lovely and darling viewers, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy, and this time I'm reviewing Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is the classic Gothic horror novel that is the beginnings of science fiction. I listened to the audiobook for this, which is narrated by Anthony Held, Stefan Rudnicki, and Simon Templeman. This story follows Dr. Victor Frankenstein as he creates his infamous creature. The book starts off with this sea captain, though, Captain Walton, and he is out on the Arctic Circle on this scientific expedition, and he wants to push the boundaries of scientific knowledge for the sake of, becoming famous for it. And while he's out on the ice, he and his crew see this dog sled team carrying this really tall, 8-foot man across the tundra. And they're like, that's kind of weird. But it becomes weirder when 2 days later they find another dog sled team, this time carrying a dying man, and they bring the man on board their ship, try to revive him, and the person that they find is Dr. Victor Frankenstein. And the sea captain and Frankenstein start talking, and Frankenstein starts to regale him with the tale of his past and why he's out on the ice following this man. And we hear the story of how Frankenstein is this medical student who's obsessed with science and discovery and pushing boundaries, and he's also obsessed with death because his mom has died, and he keeps wishing that he could bring her back to life. And so he starts experimenting with bringing the dead back to life, and ultimately he creates this monster out of pieces of other dead corpses, and he figures out that if he makes the monster bigger, it'll make it easier to reanimate, and basically he brings it back to life. And after he brings it back to life, he realizes that the thing he's doing is really creepy and unnatural, and so Frankenstein freaks out and screams and runs away, basically. And then the creature is disoriented, doesn't know what's happening, and also runs away. And so Frankenstein is haunted by this creature that he created. At first, it's only in the back of his mind, haunted by it, and we see him rationalizing this and what he's done, and he gets sick, and his friend has to come help him, and eventually he gets called home. Really, the interesting part to me was Frankenstein creating the monster. And then later, Frankenstein encounters the creature again, and the creature has learned how to talk. And so he starts telling Frankenstein his tale, his history of what's been going on since they last met, since he created him, and why the monster is a little bit annoyed with Frankenstein for abandoning him and making him look hideously ugly, and leaving him with no friends, and how nobody else wants to be his friend. Yeah. And then the monster decides that he should just take revenge on Frankenstein and destroy his entire life. It's a fun book, guys. I love it. Ultimately, the monster destroys everything that Frankenstein cares about, and then Frankenstein decides that he needs to get revenge on the monster, and that's why he's chasing him across the tundra. So the book itself surprised me. I grew up watching Young Frankenstein and had seen the old 1930s Frankenstein movie, and the book doesn't really follow those. We find out so much more about Frankenstein and the monster and what's going on in their heads, and there's this character Walton that most movies just completely skip over, and there's a lot of philosophy in this book, and a lot of moralizing and taking it in, and different characters contemplating what's happening and rationalizing it and exploring how they feel about it. So from a philosophical perspective, this is a really interesting, really deep book, and you can take a lot of stuff out of this. So the subtitle of this book is The Modern Prometheus, so there's definitely comparisons to the Prometheus story, where this Greek god takes fire from Mount Olympus and then brings it to Earth and then gets punished for it. And there's also parallels between the Bible and Paradise Lost, and the story of Adam being brought up, and the creature being the first of its kind versus Adam being the first of man, and how their story is different. Also, Paradise Lost with Lucifer having this fall from grace. But when I was reading this, mostly what caught my attention was this whole struggle with good versus evil, and whether or not you're created evil or you have to develop that, or is humans creating good and then we develop evil, or are we a mix of it? How does nature versus nurture play into this? If Frankenstein had treated the monster differently, would the monster have turned out differently? Lots and lots to get out of it, and it's definitely worth reading, especially if you haven't actually read the book before and you're only relying on the movie. So the setting also adds to this book and plays a pretty big part of it, at least what I was getting out of it. We start off in the tundra where you're isolated and it's cold and nothing grows and there's really no life, and it's really just man and like science out there. And then we get into Frankenstein's background and we see him growing up in the Swiss Alps, and then like the beauty of that atmosphere. And then he goes to school, I think it's in Germany, but like this college town and the academia setting. And then we follow the creature as he's running and hiding, and there's a lot of darkness as the creature is avoiding people because people are pretty much awful to him just because he looks hideously ugly. Pretty big moral of this book would probably be trying to accept others who are different and trying to understand them, and that a little bit of kindness can also go a long way. So like if there are different instances where the creature encounters humans, and if those encounters would turn out differently, people had been nicer to him rather than attacking him or running away from him, like would he have had a different experience growing up? So much philosophy in this, and it's just a book review, so I don't really want to get into it too much. But if you guys haven't read Frankenstein, I definitely recommend it. In the audiobook, there were 3 different narrators because each narrator took on a different narrator's voice. So there's Walton narrating part of it, there's Frankenstein narrating part of it, and creature and the creature narrating part of it. So that's why there's 3 narrators. I thought they all did a good job of it, and it was spooky a bit at times. Especially the bits where he's creating the creature, when the creature encounters him, and the moments where the creature really just lashes out. It's definitely had a Halloween vibe to it. So the creature I feel very sympathetic towards, but I also feel like he's also wrong. Like some people are like, everything is Frankenstein's fault, and the creature is just a product of his upbringing. And I also think that the creature knows enough to be philosophical, and he recognizes good and evil and makes an active decision to be evil and take vengeance. And so I feel like the creature is also awful. So both Dr. Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster are, in my opinion, both pretty awful. And it's interesting to see them in this loop of like vengeance and getting each other back. And really both of them kind of bringing each other down in this spiral of like, we're just going to keep doing bad things to each other over and over. Another thought on this book is that the creature is nameless, and so some people, when reading the book, get really annoyed when people refer to Frankenstein's monster as just Frankenstein. Personally, it doesn't bother me though, because I feel like he's Frankenstein's child, and child usually takes the parent's last name, and Frankenstein is the last name, so the creature would also be a Frankenstein. Which is just, it doesn't have any other name, so of course it would have his dad's last name. But also his dad's kind of awful to him, so yeah. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of this book. Really check out Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Peace out. I love you guys, and keep reading. Bye!